Um, let's just jump right into it. I don't know if you have anything that's anything that's off limits or not, but otherwise, I'm just going to ask really good. I just, in general, I like to have conversations and ask really good questions. So, um,
Okay.
if you're down for that, I thought it'd be cool to just kind of see where things go and let the world know about what you're up to and how awesome it is. Well, I mean,
Okay. That sounds
already
good.
led with the fact we went to Alaska. Um, so if you just want to jump right in, introduce yourself, tell us where you're coming from, and then I'll just start queuing up some cues, and then you can bounce back with some A's.
Sure. Well, it's first of all, it's an honor to be here. I'm glad that we were able to take the time and connect. I've been looking forward to this opportunity. And as far as who I am, like a little bit, but for those listening, I have been in the financial services industry for 22 years. I started at a large wirehouse as a financial advisor trainee. I didn't quite make it 2 year. Well, I made it just over 2 years. And then I took a small little break and came back to the same organization as an administrative assistant. So I've got both sides perspective there as to how things can or could should operate. After that, I went to a regional bank where after a few years I moved up into the position of a team leader role, and I loved it because not only did I get to work one-on-one with clients, I got to lead a team, my immediate team, and a team of about 20 bankers and managers in the area. And 10 years ago, I left that organization to start my own firm. Haven't looked back on it since. It's not easy, but it's definitely worthwhile, especially having a young one at home at the time. He was in first grade when I made that decision. So freedom, flexibility, I think it's a great career to have that when family is one of your top values, and values are the way that I approach advice, is really tapping into what's important to you, because it doesn't matter if you've got 2 million or 20 million. At the end of the day, if you don't have your values lined up, you're still probably not going to be very happy. So we focus a lot on happiness and ideal lifestyle. I have authored a couple of books, and I know we have that in common. So, my most recent one, I just have been promoting, getting that out to the world. And in doing so, I had made the commitment through the writing and editing process that I would give away all proceeds of the book. So I'm doing that to nonprofits that benefit women. And I'm very happy with that decision, very rewarding. And I feel like people are along with my mission. They will donate more. They will they will give back and buy extra copies for other women that they feel could benefit from it. So it's really a community driven effort. And most recently, I left the broker dealer world, and still maintaining sole independence, my business. I joined an RIA in late September. So yeah, it's an evolution over time of career and work life balance, traveling for work, but it was still all fun. It didn't feel like work.
That's crazy awesome. So okay, so we've got a lot going on here. So definitely a lot to unpack here. So two books now, right? What was the first book called?
It was a series called Journeys to Success, and I am a contributing author, chapter 4 in volume 9. And the books are intended for each of the contributing authors to tell their unique experience as to how they've applied the success principles of Napoleon Hill.
Awesome. Okay, so you're a
Yeah.
big Think and Grow Rich fan?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then when did the second one, which is Rogue, right? When did that one come out?
Yep. So we marketed it strategically. We pre-sold it in December of
Mhm.
2020. And then we launched the ebook and the paperback last November, the November of 2022. No, 2021, sorry. And
Yeah.
then 2023, our big plan is to get it into audiobook as well.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. So not so you said all the proceeds from the book go to nonprofits. Are there certain ones or just different ones that you pick or
Yeah,
what's
I choose a
how
different
do you
one each year. The
cool.
pre-sale proceeds went to an organization called the B event. And then last year, the proceeds went to the Hope Project. And this year, they're going to WWK, Women with Knives.
Okay. Oh yeah, we mentioned that women are throwing ninja Death Stars at each other, and it's going to be epic when I figure out the secret.
At
Um,
targets, not at each other.
yes, and I did not say that. If I did say that, we'll fix it. Um,
I'm on the board. I might have some explaining to do.
oh yes, there's no violence. There's definitely safety
Huge
precautions.
empowerment, though. That's for
Definitely.
sure.
Yeah. Um, so that's awesome. So how did you so let's take it back a little bit here. For some people that don't know the difference, right? Because there's the broker dealer side, there's the RA side. Um, I'm sure with everything that's going on in the world, right? I'm sure you're probably keeping up with all the cryptos and the collapses and the Robin Hoods and Voyagers and everybody else, right? Um, so it's always interesting. I just heard yesterday Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks are getting sued along with another crypto brokerage, or not, I wouldn't call it brokerage, crypto place called Voyager, I guess. And I can't explain the details, right? But they were super transparent about no commission, no trades, and everything, right? And then the way the spread works on the exchanges, right? They were apparently actually using artificial intelligence to go out and maximize the trades place, so they made millions and millions of dollars on the spread, um, while the customers thought there were no transaction fees and stuff. Um, so first question, I guess, what is the difference between an RIA and the old world that you came from, just the normal broker dealer side of things?
Well, a little bit of the reason that I made the change was because I don't fit in a square hole. I'm the round peg, or vice versa.
Awesome.
Especially with all my assets. I forgot to mention in the bio part that I also created an online school. And when you're not normal,
Yeah.
it's hard to come to see have compliance see you as a normal person with a good heart. They don't care how good your heart is. So, there's different securities rules, some of which are quite antiquated. Some are in place, laws that go back to the 1960s and haven't kept up with modern marketing and technology. So, a big reason for leaving that is to just still always ethical and a heart for helping people get what they need, the tools and resources, was to not have the oversight on words that they're
Gotcha.
like fighting over little words in my book or in my courses. um so
Oh,
that was
so
a big reason.
did they have they had stipulation and say in what you're doing as a published author and such in your own kind of world
Yes, because I use the
because of
word
who?
money. And I I still have it. It hasn't dropped off, but my series 7. So the thing that is there, the degree or the credentials to help you help more people can actually, most people won't be as ambitious and tenacious and drive until they get the result they want. So, there was times where I'd get feedback in the book and I'd have to go back and just retool it and say, okay, done, I'll do it, whatever. Because the main thing isn't for me to fight and to get my way.
Right.
It's to get the book out to millions of women. So, there's that like power struggle, but also a bit of humility where what's most important you have to sift through.
Okay, hold on. You said a couple things that are intriguing to me. So
Okay.
number one, we're going to come back to what you mentioned briefly about your Series 7 there. But what is this online school? Tell me more about this. I didn't.
Yeah. So during COVID, I created an online school. It had been on I didn't create the school platform. I created a school inside of the platform. I used Teachable. And inside of
Okay.
it, I have uploaded a copy of my first book, which was the first thing because I just wanted to dabble. I'm kind of the person who I need to try it before I decide. So I thought,
Sure.
well, I can just put a PDF of my book in there and see how
Right.
easy, how user friendly it is. I got that, got some sales. And then during COVID, I thought, you know what, I'm going to get my courses put into place. So I pre-sold the courses and then wrote it as I was going
Awesome.
through. Yep. So over a course of 12 weeks, we got it written. And then when I started working on the book, compliance needed to see the courses.
Oh,
And let's talk about screenshotting into a Word document an entire course, the whole curriculum.
yeah. Just give them a coupon code and tell them to sign up and take it. You're like,
Well,
whoever's at
that's
the
the
top.
beauty. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so what's the course on? Or what's the general synopsis of the course that we're buying
Well,
women?
what I've discovered is that there's a big disconnect in traditional financial services where
Sure.
they have you get licensed, you go out, get your licenses, and then they say, great, now go get clients and try to sell them stuff.
right?
So, in the course of adding in financial planning to my actual financial planning business, the financial services traditional as we
Right.
know it, I was realizing that there's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of questions. And what I wanted to do is be able to have a platform out there where clients can buy the course and get the foundation addressing questions maybe they didn't know that they should or could ask, maybe they didn't know how to articulate, being able to go through and really establish just from a initial primary understanding of financial basics into where their gaps are, not in a way that I'm having them create their own estate plan or anything like
Right.
that, but just giving them components, what we look at holistically in the financial planning process, giving them all of those areas, helping them understand from a tax perspective what some of their options could be without making that recommendation. So it's truly an educational platform in which they can go through the curriculum at their leisure, and there's a plus level or a VIP level where if they want group coaching they can participate in that as well. And sometimes that's what you need is sometimes the group coaching people will tell you is more valuable than the curriculum because they
Sure.
need somebody to hold their feet to the fire.
For sure. Yeah. That's we always talk about in the marketing in the marketing world, right? Like you probably know, there's always the three levels. There's done for you, done with you, and then do it was it do it with you, do it for you, and then done for you.
Yeah,
And so I always kind of look at the like strategic levels, right? There's the one-on-one coaching, the group coaching, and then the high level kind of thing. So that's awesome.
yeah.
Is this primarily for women then? Like,
Men would find value in it too. It's
oh,
just
of
that, yeah, I
course,
speak I speak to my ideal client, a
of
female.
course. But
Yeah,
it's
and then the
for
other cool thing we did because we had traction and I've been growing my team, my human resources to be able to do things that I don't have time to fit in. We created an online book club last spring, and we're reproducing that in January. January 21st, we'll do 4 weeks of this online book club featuring my book. We broke it down because there's 5 parts to my book. The last two are kind of short. So we thought, well, let's condense that, make it 4 weeks, and then I'll be available to help facilitate and
That's awesome.
field any questions that somebody might have related to the book or not. And it's cool. It's kind of a community now where some of the ladies are reaching out to each other and becoming friends and
Yeah.
having that sense of support, which is so important because our team is all about supporting women in a way where they have a safe space to share not only their financial struggles, but then to also celebrate their successes. And sometimes there's negativity on either side where women don't have that confidence and don't feel comfortable sharing, but we're that place, we're that outlet.
That's definitely awesome. So you had mentioned so with compliance, right? And all the stipulations and the things that are happening, I'm assuming these are happening at the old employers, which per se, right? While you were building out the business and the book and other things like that. Was that kind of the one of the biggest shifts or the reasons that you had stepped into this new role and kind of
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
We still have compliance. We still have to upload all of
Right.
our material, but it's
Right.
from a different perspective. And and there's more community, there's more support. This RIA, it's called Women's Wealth Boutique. The founder is all about empowering women, not just the advisors, but our clients, and serving at a deeper level. And there's some things coming down the road with the podcast, and we just got a premiere initial copy of the magazine that we're able to contribute to. And there's just a lot of really neat things. There's the production company, Pink Fix Productions. So when we want to do our next book or do
Yeah.
a revision, we have the whole program at our fingertips. And it's small, so we have a direct line to the
Yeah.
decision makers.
That's awesome. So this is a boutique that was owned by another female advisor lady, right? That you're joined up with?
Well, she founded the RIA, so
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
but we each own. We're still all independent. We're not an employee.
Right, right, right,
We're
right. Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Mhm.
So okay, so I want to touch on that. So you said you have your series 7, right? What do you have? Your 766 or
My
65?
7, my 24, my 53.
24. Those are the fancy people, right? With that sign all the paperwork and
The
stuff, right?
principal, yeah,
The
because when I
principals.
was at the bank, I managed, so
Okay.
they had
Oh
me
man,
at
I
my
tell you what,
24.
that was the worst. That was, like, the part that I dreaded the most is whenever you had to go get it signed, you had to go find a 24 and they're like, "Oh, here, sign this," and they're like, "Oh, flip, flip, flip. Yeah, that's wrong, take it back. Oh, that's wrong," or they're like, "Flip, flip, flip," and you're like I was like, "I don't even know if it's right. Did you read that?" You're like, "Well, blah, blah." Yeah, signing off. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've never had to walk it anywhere, just electronic approvals
Oh,
these days.
really? Oh, no, I had fat stacks. I'd have, like, all, like, 5 different applications I put together, all the Schwab stuff, and then, this packet and that packet, and then there was always, like, those couple that were, like, the ones that you didn't like, you know what I mean? And it was like, "Oh, yeah, don't have him sign it, like, avoid him.
Is
Avoid him.
anybody else available?
Take it to John, take it to him," like, it's crazy.
Yeah. You
Um
know what's really neat though? I have to tell you this, like all compliance persons aren't bad. I would hate their job, but after
Mhm.
I left, I got an email to my new email address from the person who is my compliance analyst, and he wished me well
That's
on my
awesome,
new endeavors. Yeah.
that's awesome.
So,
So you said are you going to let your Series 7 go?
yeah. Yep.
That's
Don't need it. Got my 66 and I have my CFP, so in Michigan I'm good.
tell me more about that, and I say that because so I I don't wanna say I stumbled into it, right? But so the way I ended up getting mine, right, I got my Series 7, had a brand new baby at home, right? And just I was working at Sam's Club at the time, stocking shelves. Had a friend send me a text message, said, Do you know anyone who wants a job Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, $30,000 a year?" I said, "Me, I do. Like, I don't care what it is, I do, this guy." And she's like, "Okay, my friend, he's a financial advisor, he's looking for, somebody to work or whatever, right?" So then I found the organization, right? And they were like, "Hey, well, this is how this world works. You got to take this big, fancy, daunting exam called the Series 7. You got to study for months." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. What's another test? Cool." So I studied, brand new baby at home, right? Spent all the day studying, did the thing, took the test, passed the Series 7. Then I had to take the Series 66, I want to say. I don't even keep track anymore. Then I was the 66, I believe. Then I started the job, and then I had to do property and casualty and health and life and disability. So I just went through the racket and did all these things, right? And it's interesting to me. I'll have conversations with people, and they're like, "Oh, you got your Series 7?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Do you know how hard that is? Do you know how many people fail that thing? How many people can?" I'm like, "I guess, yeah, I'm not bragging like it was." I was like, I mean, I worked my ass off. Sure, it was hard, but I let mine go, right? So I got out of the business. And it was however many years ago, right? And I didn't even pay any attention to it. And I let it go, and people were like, "Oh no, why would you let it go? Oh no." And I was
That's a
like,
hard thing to contend with. It's,
"Yeah,
when I left the bank and started this business, I would be at industry events and people would say, "Oh, you should just go RIA," and I didn't understand why, and I didn't understand really how, and it didn't matter because, like in my opinion, I had clients in brokerage accounts with
right,
municipal bonds, and that made sense. Why charge them a fee? And I had these 529 accounts, and so I had to release this thing of I worked so hard to get this
right."
license that now is actually kind of holding me back.
So that's the thing. Like, I guess tell me a little bit more about what is it? Where's the freedom come from to let
There's
that
different
go?
rules
It's a
based on
major
the
accomplishment, right?
compliance department based on your licensing.
So are you saying shifting to the RIA allows you to it's irrelevant or just kind of not necessary
There's
or
still
what?
ethics and compliance, but it's not the same. And so I don't need it.
Mm, okay.
And I love the financial planning side. We manage assets. We
Right.
do the financial planning, but we're building out doing our strategic planning. And you know, I wasn't able to charge for a seminar. I can charge fees for advice and education, just not customized advice. I can give group
Right. Okay.
education. So there's still rules and parameters by all means, but it's not so limiting. And I can have an outside business activity with my online school. I can get paid for speaking engagements. I can do professional development and address a group and branch out from just trying to sell one client at a time.
Hmm. So what do you think is the value overall in the Series 7 then, as opposed to or maybe a better question is what licenses for someone brand new do you need to get into the RIA world? If you
It depends on the state.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So
so it's kind of an evolution. You're probably going to take your six if not your seven. And like I had a friend who her firm told them, oh, just get your six. I'm like, hey, if you're really doing this, why study for your six and then you're 63 and
Right.
65 or whatever. And then
Right.
later you'll probably want to get your seven. Just ask them if they'll pay for you to get your seven.
Right.
So it first of all, I think to answer your question, what licenses to get, it depends on the nature of business that you want to do and that your firm wants you to do.
Okay. I guess the biggest question was there's no regrets for you in having done all that work and all the effort and everything to just let it go.
No, because it
Okay.
was actually holding it's a ball and chain that I don't need anymore. But that's okay. It took me time to realize that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's really freeing, actually.
Really? Okay. That's super awesome. So how did you get into this industry in the first place? What made you want um, to get into the world of finances? And then the second question with that is, are you you mentioned having a little one, right? Are you the career woman? Have you always been that, hardworking kind of the way you
Yeah.
would define those career corporate climbing sort of hard charging women that, love their careers and work their way up on things, or where do you stand?
Yeah. Well, first of all, my path isn't traditional. I have a 4-year bachelor's degree in biology.
Okay.
And I needed some time off from school. And so I was just working in a restaurant. One thing led to another. I became a manager and I was having fun. It was the first time in my life that it wasn't just, oh, do be good, go to school and, go to work. I was go to work and it was actually fun for me. So, a few years into that, a friend of mine was telling me she's going to get a job with American Express Financial Advisors. And I said, well, what's that all about? And so she told me, and I go, oh, well, I could do that. So I had naive confidence, not knowing really
Yeah.
the whole thing. So at that point, that's when I started interviewing and got hired. And um, as far as career driven, yeah, I love work. It's very rewarding for me. I remember that I worked at a local ski resort in college, and I didn't know any better. They had a list on the wall, clipboard, people who wanted rooms, but the rooms or houses, whatever the chalets that they wanted, they were already sold out. So I would sit there at night and just go through the list and see if there'd been cancellations, and then call them.
Nice.
And they were delighted. They were so, it was like one of the first times I remember feeling like really gratified because I made somebody else's day.
That's awesome.
What I didn't know is at the end of that month, I had a paycheck that was much, much, much larger than it should have been because
Oh,
all of those reservations I was doing, they were accruing a little bit of a commission. I had no idea.
what? That's awesome.
Yeah.
You,
So it's really cool, really fun, make somebody's day. And in retrospect, my day was made too. So that
oh,
that was really fun. That was my first taste of like a little added incentive just for doing what you were supposed to do in the first place. And then it continued kind of working up. I always had multiple jobs, even when I first started with the financial services business. And then about I would say, you know what? And it's just been kind of like you said, somebody said, hey, do you want this job or whatever?
yeah.
Can you talk to someone? It was a lot of that because when I had left, I was in like the third and fourth years of being with that warehouse. Somebody walked my resume up to her boss at another regional bank than I had gone to. And whatever, they looked at it, didn't do anything with it except for pass it over to the firm the bank that hired me.
Wow.
So that was really cool because nobody had to do that and it all came to fruition. And then I just, I love to study. I'm a good test taker, so that wasn't a problem. And
Yeah.
when I had the opportunity to step up into a management role for my team when my team leader had left, I said, okay, I'll do it. And that was phenomenal. And then I don't know if you know my story very much, but I didn't really have a lot of money. I had negative money. And so when I got my first, we were paid quarterly. And when I got my first big check, it was like 10 grand. You would have thought
Wow.
I won the lottery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was life changing. So
And that was from
having,
was that the banking world or where were what
yeah, the
was
bank world when I started there. And so it gave me the momentum to keep going and keep trying and keep moving up. And so that's it was life changing. I remember I started in early February, and like that week or the following week, we had to go to Columbus for a big investment company meeting. And we're at dinner. And I remember this one advisor leans across the table and kind of goes, Melissa, you don't know what you just walked into. And I'm going, what? And I make a mistake. He goes, pay attention, do the right things, and this job will change your life. And
Mm.
he was right.
And this was, and what were you primarily selling at the time? Or what did you?
Oh God, the institution I worked for allowed us to sell pretty much whatever we wanted, and so combination mainly mutual funds,
Okay.
um, annuities, fixed index variable.
Gotcha.
We had autonomy where we could do non-traded REITs, we could do individual bonds, we could do stocks. Our bankers didn't get to do all those. They can only do
Right.
managed account, like a mutual fund or an annuity. So there was some conflicts of interest sometimes when it was appropriate to make a
Sure.
recommendation, and the banker set up your appointment and they're expecting to get hit their goal or get credit for it, and then
Right.
not because it wasn't appropriate.
Oh man, yeah, that's
So
tough.
there, that was some of the conflict of interest. And then towards the end, when I decided to leave, we were in a position where we were supposed to have 4 sales appointments a day.
Whew, yeah.
And that's a lot, especially
Yeah.
our geography, our footprint that we covered was from my house to the farthest office was about 2 hours
Woo.
one way. So,
Wow.
I'm leaving the house at 6:30 in the morning, not getting home till 7, all on my they stopped paying us mileage.
Yep.
And it was our own vehicle. So the what year was that? In 2007 I put on 60,000 miles.
Oh man. That's
Yeah, that was a lot of money in gas, because back then the gas was about the same price as it is now.
right. Yeah, that's reckless. So,
Yeah.
but you did it. I mean, you were working your way up, right? Like you said, you were
Yeah, I
loving
just
it
I
and you were,
kept my head down,
yeah,
focused on what needed to be done. And it was so cool. I remember, and this is the part that about leadership and working with a team that I love and I missed for so many years until I made the commitment to start giving people jobs. Like, why
yeah,
hold this back? Share this with other people. So I remember one of the things that we had is we at the bank we had a scorecard. So we got credit for revenue that we produced. We got credit for revenue in certain areas. So not annuities didn't count for insurance; they just counted for revenue. But
right.
any insurance products, 401k, and what was the other one? Oh, fee based.
Mhm.
So we had to sell general revenue and then insurance, 401k plans, and fee based. Now, we're working on the retail side with the retail customer. We're not
Right.
even in private financial group. And we're supposed to go out and sell 401k plans. It was crazy. It's just not in the flow of what you're supposed to do in a day, in the day of the life. So I actually hired, this is where I think wasn't there a book a while ago called like Gutsy Leadership or something.
Yeah, I think so.
So I hired a person specifically to get 401k plans. I want to say she started maybe like in the spring. And in December, she's like, hey, this one business hasn't gotten back to me. What should I do? Well, I said, you know what? Why don't you just send over a letter of intent to them? This is fax over a letter
Yeah,
of
yeah.
intent and see what happens. So I don't remember if it was the same day. I think it was, but in a very short period of time, she's hooping and hollering and going crazy because they sent back a signed LOI, which is what we needed to get us a trip to Cancun, Mexico.
Wow, that's incredible.
It was awesome.
Welcome to
So like
Jackson.
that's the fun stuff. I don't have to be the hero. I just have to, let me help you make things happen.
Yeah. So what would you say is the one thing out of all the work that you do right now, what's the one thing that means the most to you?
Helping people pay off debt.
Okay. So you're okay. So tell me a
Yes, I
little
listened
bit.
to one of your other podcast interviews, and I know you did financial peace.
Yeah, yeah. I did it for a little while. I taught it for a little bit. I was a huge, yeah, I to this day, I mean, I just used to tell people like it's not that I don't understand why people when I was young and a little bit more naive, right? I was like, financial planning, you just need to make a budget, and it's really not that hard to just like not be so terribly strapped. I mean, granted, certain situations cause people hard times, but like in general, right? Like you talk about the typical American, okay? The house, the cars, the boats, the everything. Like those are all self-inflicted wounds. Let's just be honest, right? Like
Yep.
it's not hard. So tell me. So I'm curious. So tell me a little bit more. Where's your because some people where do you stand on that fence, or what's your cause for why do you stand behind that cause so much, I guess? What is it about getting out of debt?
Because it's when you don't have debt, let's say you took all your debt payments and you paid them off. You
Yeah.
just gave yourself a raise. You also gave yourself wiggle room. And this is what I know. When clients get scared about what's going on in the market,
Yeah.
it's because they don't have enough cushion to weather the storm. There's not enough money in the bank, there's not enough money in their investment accounts, and they know it. Because if they had enough, and if they had done financial planning up to that point where they're freaking out, they would know where they stood. And sometimes it's just really, really hard to look at the truth. But what's really
Sure.
cool is, and your clients probably said it to you, oh my gosh, it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Yeah.
But it's just that fear, and not knowing is a huge fear. And starting too late, it's all the traditional stuff. Starting too late, the
Yeah.
earlier start, the better you'll be. But also it is knowing where your values are and what you stand for and what's important to you. And the first three chapters of my book, we don't even talk about money, numbers, a
Right.
budget, anything like that. And my number one rule when we get to the meat and potatoes is don't start with the budget. And
Okay.
so I've designed in, when you get the book, you get a link that you can download that's a workbook. And the workbook, it takes you through thinking about your values and taking you through an exercise where you think about what's important to you and what you want the outcome to be in that particular category, and then you fill in the response. So it's like a backwards,
Awesome.
it's algebra,
Yeah.
only with events, not numbers. So the next thing is, because everybody says, oh, you need to start with a budget. Well, it's hard to start with a budget if you don't like numbers, or you think you're not good with money and you have a lot of negative self-talk, or you think, well, this stinks. I know I'm going backwards. So there's no way, how can I even make a budget? There's a lot of negativity around numbers and mindset and scarcity, and not being in a position to even be creative. So the next piece of the workbook is tapping into their creativity and letting the participant dream. And then we just go through, hey, what do you think you have? A checklist. Do you have these items or these things in place? And then the next one beyond that is helping them gather documents so that when it gets time to work with an advisor, being in their insurance person or their attorney or their accountant, their financial planner, they've got the hard part done, which the hardest part is gathering everything.
Right. Right.
And then we have them do a net worth calculation. So I build it up in a way that's bite-sized pieces, that's easy to digest, and for the right reasons. There's a strategy to it so that it seems accomplishable.
That's awesome. So it doesn't necessarily does it start with paying off your debt though, or what does that come into the equation?
Well, the actual worksheet is for that is in the packet. It's towards the later half of it.
Okay.
But I paid off my house in March, have no regrets.
Nice.
And it's just so freeing because now I can be. Yesterday I was writing year-end checks for charitable giving.
Yeah.
And I have a scholarship fund that I started. So there's a few, like, I like to do my giving in private, but I wrote about the
Right.
scholarship fund. So that's important. And like giving all the proceeds from the book, there's some things that I think when we give, we can do it from a perspective of we're leading by example and showing others that it's possible. But I also have a goal that I want to take at least one trip per quarter. And so
Nice.
now I've
Yeah.
freed up some money for personal reasons too.
So I got to ask you this one, the typical debate, right? So as an entrepreneur and a business owner, right? What is your mindset on the idea of so what's your idea, your mindset on the idea of using debt or leveraging debt for the business side versus, if the mission is for women, right? And like get out of debt, is it just personal, or what do you tell us crazy entrepreneurs, right? So, for example, my wife and I have this debate all the time, like, oh, personal debt, yeah, it's terrible. But listen, this website I want to buy, if I just borrow $20,000 and it pays me what, like, I think for 20 grand, you can buy something that's making probably 500 bucks a month, right? So, when the math makes sense, right? And you're winning, what's your take on that? Like debt for business versus you know,
If you're holding me to making one statement, I would say debt free all the way on both.
oh, okay. And if you're allowed to wiggle past the one statement, what's your overall take on it? Just debt's bad. People
Uh,
shouldn't have it.
Not necessarily. I mean, we were able to buy where we live now. We live on the lake, and we were able to buy the property at a very good
Nice.
discount because it was still coming out of the 2008
Okay.
price crisis.
Nice.
So had we not done that, we wouldn't probably own this property for sure and might not be on the water. So but we did things. So we bought where we live now. We There was a different house that we've since torn down and rebuilt,
Nice.
but that first house we rented out as a vacation rental,
Ooh,
and we kept a really big nest egg for emergencies in case we didn't have it
yeah,
rented or the furnace went out or any of
sure.
those things. And the goal was we would live where I lived until we could sell the house where we were living to pay off the mortgage on this house, because the first house was already paid off. So once we had enough money where we could sell my home that we lived in
Uh-huh.
and pay off the mortgage over here,
Okay.
that's when we did it. So we did it safe. And so many people kind of
Yeah,
jeered at us, poked at us, like, why are you living on the lake? You should be on the lake, blah, blah, blah,
sure.
blah, blah. But we took it slow and steady. We didn't want to jeopardize what we'd already built in terms of our finances.
That's awesome. And is this you and your son?
Husband.
Oh, okay. We didn't mention that. You're married. Okay. How
Yep.
old's your boy now?
He is 16.
Okay. Just the one kid?
Yep.
Okay. That's awesome.
Unfortunately, he wants nothing to do with financial planning as a business. He likes to work with
Really?
his hands. Yeah.
Okay. He's a craftsman, a tradesman, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
He's in the Career Line Tech Center construction program, and he worked
that's
all last
awesome.
summer in construction. And I,
Is it,
he will probably not be following in my footsteps,
yeah.
unfortunately, but
Is that,
I want him to be true to him.
yeah, is that interesting to see that, like to have your own child kind of like the complete opposite world of it, like if you kind of
Hmm.
simplify it, right? Like, um, interesting thing I worked at when I was working for selling home and auto insurance, right? One of the big advisors or whatever, right? The guy, the territory manager and stuff, right? So we had to sell these. We were working for State Farm at the time, and he wanted us to sell health insurance policies, right? And the trick he told me was to figure out when people take a shower. So whether they needed whether or not they needed a health insurance, disability income, or was it a disability income policy? One of the two, right? It was determined when they took a shower. So if they showered at night because they worked all day, like they were typically tradesmen or construction people or welders or whatever, right? They showered at night, and then if they showered in the morning, then they were suit and tie, white collar professionals and stuff, right? And so and I just remember that was interesting. Like it's like, what
That's
if
an
they showered
interesting
during?
analysis.
Yeah, because like if they, oh, I got to remember what the other product was, but that's how serious I took the field at the time. But yeah, so it was like um I forget what it was because it was either a disability income policy or I don't know, it might have been a health insurance policy, something like that. Like it's like, oh, you shower at night because you're a welder, so you definitely need this disability income policy because it's just here. And if you get car insurance, you definitely need this and health insurance and the umbrella and everything else. It was crazy, but interesting stories. I did run into a guy though. I remember I sold him life insurance, and or no, I he went by it, but I sold him a policy for his son. His girlfriend was pregnant at the time, and they had a little boy. And I remember I helped getting a policy. I like it took me like weeks, right? And but he refused to buy the disability insurance, right? And he was a directional borer, so he worked like underground, like
Uh,
drilling, doing the
yeah.
crazy stuff. And this was, I don't know, 2017 maybe. So I ran into him at a park like a few months ago, and he had his cast on his hand. And I'm like, oh man, what happened? He's like, oh, I was putting in some windows on an old barn, and I fell off the ladder and smashed his hand straight through a window, and he just shattered like everything in his entire hand and wrist. And he was like, "Yep, I haven't worked for like 6 months and can't make any money, and it's killing me." And I was like, "Dude, you should have bought that disability income policy in 2017." I tried selling.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, like, being in the world, right? Like we think about it and everyone's like, you just want me to buy this and you want me to buy that. And I'm like, no, I really know what it is and you'd actually need it. Like
Yeah.
for 18 bucks a month, like you might not need it for the last 3 years, but on year four, when you shatter
Hmm.
your hand and
You
you
know,
really
that's
can't do
that's
the
what I like
job.
about doing financial planning and leading with that, because I never have to convince.
Right.
They either know it and still agree not to get it, any type of insurance, or they can see the detrimental outcome.
Yeah.
And I position us as risk managers. And it doesn't matter how much money you've saved up, if it's all gone. I live on a lake, there's boating accidents all the time, deaths.
Definitely.
you know there's most people have worked too hard. Nobody would say, oh, I didn't work hard at all, so I don't care if it all evaporates.
Right. Right.
So yeah, that's part of, I feel, our responsibility to make sure that people are aware of it and understand the implications.
So do you feel like being in the work you do now, you mentioned that's interesting. You mentioned you don't have to convince people, right? What do you think are some of the biggest challenges in your industry or in the field, right? Of financial planning versus selling versus, however you want to define it, right? Like how do you kind of walk that line of not just constantly selling things, but helping educate clients and helping people understand what they
I
need or
think it
not
comes
need?
down to your messaging to speak to the audience that you want to work with. My micro niche is single female pharmacists.
Really? How'd you come up with pharmacist?
I have single female pharmacists that I love working with, so why not duplicate them?
Okay.
They're smart, they're educated, they're logical, they're human, so they have emotions. They usually like to travel. They make good income. A lot of times they have problems that they can't put money into their 401k or a Roth IRA because they made too much or they've maxed out their 401k. So they've got
Right.
other problems. So yeah, I love working with them.
So you just happened to pick up a couple of those clients and you were like, wow, that's my customer, that's my person.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So I have a coach, and I decided I wasn't going to coach under her anymore. And she goes, well, how about if you're one of my coaches? So I don't coach her, but in her program,
Oh,
I'm one of
yeah,
the
yeah.
people who she
Sure.
sends her clients to.
That's
And so
awesome.
we were doing this exercise, coming up with messaging around events and
Yeah.
niche marketing and getting to that ideal client. And that's where it clicked. So I always, when it comes to investing in yourself, that's one of the themes in my book. Um, I believe that the more time you spend working on yourself as well as helping others, that you will be paid back multifold. But it's about taking that time to do the work. And over time, you reap the results. It's like investing in the market.
Right.
If you put money in a year ago, you're kicking yourself. If you put money in 2.5 years ago, you're still in the black and you're
Right.
happy. If you put money in 2000 and March of 2009, you're really happy.
So what would you say is the single greatest investment that you made into yourself? Business, personally or professionally?
Education.
Which can you pinpoint?
It's all the different types. Some of it is just the self learning through reading books on management, and then I learned the difference between management and leadership. And had interesting conversations with friends who'd say, oh, they're the same, and I
Right.
disagree. So it got interesting.
Right.
But I really believe, like, the knowing what you don't know and pursuing that, getting in your field the credentials that you need, getting because I have my CFP, so I had to have a bachelor's degree to get the CFP. So it's not just one type of education. That we mentioned the online school with Teachable.
Yeah.
I I wanted to see how to build a website, so I bought a course that
Okay.
was, the platform was on Teachable, so I learned how to build a website. I'm not
Sure.
a good graphic designer. I struggled, but I learned enough now where when I'm talking to my tech people, or
Yeah.
my graphic people, my marketing people. I know the language. I know how, what, we can share a screen and I know what that particular link or button or function is. So I think at some point you learn enough to know what you don't know and what's better
Sure.
to delegate. And some things you just delete and some things you retain and you do. But I think learning is multifunctional. Some of the best learning is just by traveling or going to a place where you haven't been before, even if it's in your own community. The observations that you can get,
So
conversations.
how can we encourage more people, if for all the women out there listening, right? So I'm a huge, personal development, I'm big into the same thing, right? But the majority of the world, right? Like they work hard and they need their money, right? And they need to save it and they need to protect it, right? So, if you run across somebody and you're like, hey, you should really hire this coach that's $500 a month or $1,000 a month, or you should join a mastermind, or you should, like, and there's endless stories, right? Like there's people that have said, "Hey, I went to this event, I joined a mastermind, and 12 months later, right, bam." Like
Yeah.
the things that can change in someone's life are immense, right? But oftentimes it's a big chunk, right? Like that's a $10,000 coaching program, right? Or a $5,000, a
Yeah.
$5,000 coaching program is, one of our mentors has for our physical products business on Amazon, right? Or $25,000 a year to join, Russell Brunson's inner circle, right?
Yeah.
But people can
It
go from
depends
that.
on what you're going to do.
Okay.
Because you can hope, oh,
Right.
I hope I get my money back. Right. I used to be in a
Yeah.
BNI group and people would say that about $500 all the time. Well, I hope I
Yeah.
get after a year. I hope you do too.
Right.
Otherwise, you shouldn't be here. And if you're worried about getting $500 back, how are you going to help me or the rest of the members in the group? Right.
Right.
So I think it's believing that that it's possible, trying something new, getting out of your comfort zone and being willing to be vulnerable, to be critiqued, to keep building. I have a lot of, now I'll call them digital assets that, oh, they were so rudimentary, but who cares, because they worked. And I have
Right.
clients now who have been served by, if somebody was critiquing it,
For sure.
I'd probably be embarrassed, the old version, but I don't care because I didn't let it stop me from perfection, not letting perfection get in the way of serving and making that progress forward. So I think everybody should be in coaching. And this is the thing too, because the first time I went into coaching, I didn't I didn't really realize what kind of coaching it was. So I wasn't
Hmm.
getting what I needed. And then I was frustrated and they didn't understand me. So
Okay.
it wasn't necessarily the best fit, but I didn't let that keep me from getting a different coach. And,
Gotcha.
at any given time, I'll refer to my coach team. Like I've got 4 or 5 different coaches.
Yeah. So what did it take though for you? I mean, like if you look at it from a financial perspective, right? Like how did you what was it, what did it take for you to shift your mindset to have that belief to say, look, I'm writing the check. I'm
Yeah.
writing a check to hire the coach because I'm going to accomplish X. Because especially from your world as a financial planner, right? Like you're helping these women and you're here to motivate them and you're going to push them and you're going to tell them like, hey, here's where you can get to, here's what you can accomplish, but you got to put the money in the game, you got to put the skin in the game, and you got to go for it. So how can you what do you tell them to help them kind of get over that edge, or how did you get over that for yourself? Like what was that, what that
Well,
first
my decision to make
yeah.
the biggest jump in the investment of hiring a coach,
Yeah.
I was just at a point where I was bored
Okay. Boredom.
and I needed the challenge. And
Interesting.
I invested in the challenge, but I had my financial house in order. So I knew that
Okay.
if she was a flake, if she was a scam artist, I'm sending my money, like if I lost it all, that initial investment, it was
It was
there
okay.
was a comma in it and multiple zeros. So
Okay.
it was substantial, but I just trusted that it would work out. And I'm a worker. If you give me a
Yeah.
checklist, I'll do everything you tell me. So I knew that I would do what I was told to do.
And that was your very first, was that your
My
very first
second,
coach? That was your second
second
coach,
coach.
but that was
Yep.
the biggest one, you think?
Yep.
And did it work out for you? Did that choice with that coach work out well?
Yep.
That's awesome. Okay. That's crazy.
Almost tripling what my revenue was when I started.
Really?
hmm
Really? Okay.
Yep. And I don't feel bored anymore. So
Really?
it's quality of life, like job satisfaction. It's not, I don't look at it as a job. I look at it as my life and it's fun.
Yeah. So
So
we won't ask
hi-
what you paid, but what was the who was the coach, or was she specific to financial planning or like a business
female
coaching?
financial advisors, Robin Crane.
Okay, that's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sure she
Yep.
got a really great testimonial from you so far.
Yeah.
That's
I'm on some of her sales pages.
that's awesome. Um, what's interesting, you said you mentioned being bored, right? I remember very specifically. I remember a quote when I was reading Tim Ferriss's. It was either in his book or on a podcast. Um, he had mentioned that the opposite of happiness isn't unhappiness, right? It's boredom. So when people aren't happy in their life, right, you can't just go seek more happiness, right? You have to realize that boredom is the thing that prevents you from creating happiness. So I think that's just really interesting, like for you to have identified that boredom was like the root cause of just, this something's missing
Going
piece.
through the routine. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it gave me, I saw it as an opportunity to do something more.
that's really awesome. Is that who you're doing coaching with now under her
I'm one of
program?
her coaches. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. That's crazy. I've looked multiple times into Brooke Castillo. You ever look into the life coach school with Brooke
Mhm.
Castillo? What? Oh, she's amazing. She's amazing. She does like
Oh, and
that.
I'll go back to the thing about like what made me decide I would do invest in the coaching, but once I did, it was more of I need to do this because I do have somebody else who looks at the checkbook
Gotcha.
or
Really
at
like,
least the tax returns to see how much I spent on education this year.
where's all the commas coming from? We discussed that. That's incredible. Um, so what's next? What's 2023 look like for you? What's on the horizon? What's big?
Well, looking at building out our team, getting more people to do what we do. We're positioned well to be a virtual business. So people who can help in the financial planning investment area. That's one segment. My technical team, that's another area. So I'm definitely looking at growing and providing jobs and doing that so that I can have more time freed up to lead the events that we might be doing, from be it a webinar or a workshop, doing paid speaking events, getting out there and being the face of the business, the rainmaker of the business, and having the team help serve more clients. And because we don't do account minimums, I made a very
Okay.
firm decision that I wasn't going to do that. And not because I want to make a bad business decision, but because I want to help the me that I was 22 years ago. And so we can do that with education, with coaching, with support, with courses, and let them build their investment along the way as it's appropriate, and be that lifetime advisor so that we have lifetime clients.
Yeah. So
And it's
what
not just me either, right? Like, what if something happened to me? We have a team. So
so are you still working with clients? Or are you trying to level yourself up to kind of oversee,
well, I
like
don't want
whatever?
any clients to freak out and think they have to leave because they're not going to get me. I'm not ready to make that statement. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I mean, I'm at capacity as
That's
to
cool.
what I can accommodate and deliver excellent world class service. So we need to have other people start to do some of those things. And like Holly, you met Holly when we
Right?
were in Traverse City. She can do things now like getting online with somebody and helping them connect their various accounts into the financial planning software. That's a great
Sure.
thing for her to do, is she's learning the business and help the client, and they get to meet her and interact with her. So yeah, it's a team.
That's awesome. So what is one thing, I guess, what's one thing anyone out there listening can do to help support you or empower the women or move the cause? Or where can they find out more about you? And then what can they do to help support you?
A great way to get started or come into our world and support our mission would be to buy a copy of Going Rogue.
Okay.
And you can do that. You can go to the page where we can collect your emails so we can continue to reach out and stay in touch with you. It's goingrogue.askmelissameyers.com. And Meyers is Meyers. So goingrogue.melissameyers. Excuse me. Did we change it? I can't remember. Hang on. I'm having a Zoom freeze.
That's okay. We'll
Goingrogue.askmelissameyers.com.
find it. Okay, and then I'm assuming is the book on Amazon as well, or is that through your website to buy it directly?
Yep, it's on Amazon.
Okay,
Ebook and physical book and audiobook coming in 2023.
perfect, perfect. Okay, awesome. Well, anything else you want to share with everyone out there listening before we wrap up this call and this awesome conversation from tonight?
Yeah, I dedicated the book to my mom because she always said you can do anything you put your mind to. And I believe you can as well. And so, if you need somebody in your court, if you don't believe it, if nobody else around you believes it, I believe it. You can do anything you put your mind to.
That is amazing. Awesome. Well, I think we'll leave everyone, we'll leave it for this. We'll leave it with that. Just understand, coming from the top here, that you can do anything you want, anything you set your mind to. So believe in yourself and believe in the mission.
Absolutely.
Awesome.